Great. So welcome everyone to Unleashing the Power of Emails in Salesforce Flow. This is a standalone session that I'm doing as part of my the content I'm generating as part of the Flow Architect. The Flow Architect is a Salesforce blog that I run where I talk about flows, covering topics around documentation, the release updates, and quite a few extra bits as well that's coming down the pipeline. So this session is part of that. I am going to also be doing another session in August, which I'll talk about towards the end on reactive screen flows. But tonight we're looking at emails in that, and just to kind of give a bit of background as to why the session came up as an idea originally was at the admin preview that Salesforce did for the Summer 23 release. I don't know if anybody watched the admin preview who's here. But as some of the Salesforce do every release, they do a series of webinars called Release Readiness Live. And they do one which is the general admin preview. In the admin preview this time around, they showed off the updates to the send email action inside of Salesforce and inside of Flow. And one of the questions that came up around it got me thinking about, what kind of other things can we do with email inside of Flow? And the question that came up was literally, could you load a email template into Flow, make some tweaks to it, or check that it is okay to go, and then before sending it off as an email? And the short answer to that is yes, you can. The longer answer is there's some consideration points to be had, as there is with just about anything that you do inside of Salesforce and Flow. So we're going to be having a look at emails inside of Flow tonight. And just for those who maybe haven't met me yet, I'm not going to go through all of the stuff on the screen. But as you can see from there, I would guide over myself as a Flownatic, and I am multi-time certified within the ecosystem. In fact, I work at a partner, and I also have the process automation credential to my name. And as you can see, I am very, very big into Flow, as I was at TDX earlier this year and managed to get a picture with Flow, who was unleashed to the world, shall we say, over at TDX. I had been pushing for those of us who do automation to get a mascot for and a certification for a couple of years now. And so it was really cool to see us getting a mascot. But that's a little bit about myself. And as I say, I don't want to leave that on too long, because we really want to get to the content for this evening. So what were we going to be covering tonight? We're going to be covering a bit about the things that we can do in emails with Flow Builder. I'm going to give you a brief overview of that, more specifically talking about the items that we're going to do this evening in there. I'm then going to give a bit of an overview of the send email action in Flow Builder. Although this will probably morph into being part of the hands-on section of it. So we're going to talk about the send email action, what you can do with it, and the various items that's involved in that action. And that's specifically what we're going to be focusing on tonight. So you can send email alerts using Flow. I will show you how to do that briefly, but that's not what we're going to be focusing on this evening. We're going to be focusing specifically on the send email action and what you can do with that. And then as part of the hands-on demo, we're going to look at some of the different things that we can do with email action, such as being able to load email templates and edit them as well before they get sent off. So that's some things we're going to be able to do in that. And with that in mind, let's talk about what we can do with emails in Flow Builder. And this is my very simple list in here. But what we can do within emails in Flow Builder, I've got a simple list for what we're going to look at tonight. We're going to actually load an email template and edit it before sending. You're going to show you how to log emails against records. And we're going to show you a way of how you can send emails at scheduled times. With that, there is a couple of things you have to bear, some things you'll have to bear in mind with these items. With the editing email templates before sending, you obviously do have to know the email template that you're working with. So you'll have to know the name of that template, and there's things you would want to consider in there, such as my advice would be to not have multiple templates with the same name in there, and I'll show you that's because it's so you can retrieve them a bit easier. Also, with that, with logging emails against records, those records obviously have to exist, and that's a fairly obvious one in there. So I just got a random ping and I can't see what that is. So that was make sure that's not something. Well, that's just an email. And then the last one is for sending emails scheduled time. So back onto track. For sending emails at scheduled times, this is not something that's native, that is available by default in Salesforce. So you have to create some custom functionality around that. And how that is being done in for tonight's session is that I've set up a custom object just called scheduled message, and we'll basically create a record, and with the scheduled path option, we will send that email out at a scheduled time. So that's what we're going to do there. And just go back into there. So we'll cover the send email action in our next section, and we're going to move pretty much straight into the hands-on component here. So we're going to look into some of the cool things that we can do with email in Flow Builder. I'll just have a look at that. And yes, just as a note, there is going to be a recording share made available after this. So we're going to come back into our email, and you can see here I've got an email template ready set up that we'll be able to pull in and we'll be able to work with. So what we'll do first, rather than work with an email template, we will sort out a send. We'll do the schedule email one on here. So if we go into Flow, into our setup and go into Flows, I'm going to show you how you can create an easy method of sending scheduled emails using Flow. So we come into here. I'm going to set up a record triggered flow for this. And again, this is a record triggered flow because if you want to send emails at a specific time, it would have to be done via scheduled path. It's not something that you can do without some real hacky workarounds in scheduled triggered flows. So we're going to have this be set up on our scheduled message. And we're going to just set this up for when it's created on there for this example. You can have it for when the record is created or updated. If you want to include tweaks to that email, you can. But for this instance, we are going to stick with created for the sake of ease of this demo. For condition requirements, you can. I would often encourage you to include condition requirements in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a status in here, and we're going to have this to does not equal send. So I've got a pick list in this custom object where I have a send status, which is equal to either pending or sent. And then we're just going to have that. So when a record is created and it does not have the send status of sent. You could add more to this if you had your own solution and built this out a bit more fully, but I'm just going to show you a more streamlined version of this for what you can do. So in here, you can see we're in Flow. We've set up our scheduled message. I'm going to now add in the scheduled path. So I'm going to just add in a path, and I'm going to put in on scheduled time. And what I normally do inside of my APIs, just so you know, I normally do my API name first, because I prefer using camel case format, which is what you can see here, where I've got path at the front and then on scheduled time. And then I use my label, do my label secondly. And we can see here in terms of the time source, you've got various options. You've got when the record is created, on the created date and last modified date, or you can have it on a date and date time field that you add in there. So if you would have wanted to have these done based on the date, you can run that based on the date field, but I've got this set on the date time. So that would generally be better for email scheduling. So I'm going to set this to have an offset number. Offset number is basically how many intervals of time afterwards or before on that. So you can see here we've got we've got months before and after, days before and after, hours before and after, and minutes before and after. I'm going to set it to be 0 minutes after, and this will then schedule that path to run at the time of the schedule of the send date and time that will configure in the record. In terms of what we'll do in terms of the run the media path on this kind of one, I am going to add something into here, and that's more out of preference. It is my personal preference if I'm working with scheduled paths to have something happen on the immediate path. You don't necessarily need that, but I have historically in the past, not really much anymore. I've had issues with flows erroring if there was nothing in the immediate path. I haven't seen that for a long time, but I do have the habit now, because of that historically, of adding things to the immediate path, just so that the flow does something before to ensure that the trigger for the schedule time is all fine as well. With this, I'm going to add in an assignment element here, and I'm going to set the send date, set the send status for this one, and this is going to be status here, and I'm just going to have this equal pending. So this would mean that when we create the record, we don't do anything with our send status field, but that the flow will update that as we go. The second step for this is just to add in an update. I do prefer actually using assignments to handle set the values of fields, and then just use an update to just update everything I set within the flow. On that particular path, you can do that as well, and that's just a preference of mine to do an assignment and an update. You could do either or. You can do either just an update, or you could do an assignment and an update. I prefer doing one of each personally. So that's more for personal preference on this one. So for this one, we're just going to update send status. And we'll call it that just so that we don't have two updates later on of updating the schedule message. For this one, I'm just going to use the IDs and all field values because I've already assigned it with my assignment. And you can see that I'm just going to click set my record variable. And I'm not really working with anything else from here. Okay. Now on this one, because there is a check that we want to do, we've got two options on the schedule message record here. We've got the option to send it in plain text or to send it in rich text as well. So what we need to do for this one is to check what is going to be doing to send that, and in order to decide what version it needs to be. So I'm going to basically do a decision here. I will do a decision. I will do plain or rich text. And in here, I'm just going to put my labels down to be plain or rich text. So then I'll pick up on which version it is. Normally, I would try and fill in the description fields where I can, but for the sake of demos for this evening and for time, we aren't going to be doing that. So I'm just going to do no description fields in this one, but generally speaking, I would be recommending to do to fill in your descriptions. So we're going to have plain text on this one, and this one is going to be from the field. So we're going to do record, and this is going to be the message body type. And this is a field I've already created in there, and you can see here we've got plain or rich text. So I'm going to set this to be plain text, and for the default outcome, we'll use that to be rich text, and then that will determine that. So we've got this over here for that. And then what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to send the email, sort out the send email action in terms of that. Now, what we'll be able to do, what we need to be able to do here is we need to be able to use our text template that we'll create. So we're going to create a text template. We're going to create a template. This is going to be a rich text body. And we're going to have that there be our text template. And in here, what we're going to have is we're going to have our record rich text body. And we'll have that in there, and that'll just populate our template with the rich text. We'll do another one for plain text as well. Obviously, actually, we don't actually need this. What we need is we need to have a variable for this. Sorry, I've confused myself. We do want that text template in there. So let's go back. So we've got a template in there for the rich body. We're going to have one in there for the plain text. My apologies, I got myself a little bit confused there, but we are going to have our plain text body here. And we're going to have our record plain text. So we're going to use our email body plain for that. So we've got our text templates in there. I do actually need to, yes, I've got that correct. Just check that, make sure I put that as plain text. So we've got that in there. What we need to also have, what we need to have as well is a Boolean variable here. So it's going to be var, and this is going to be rich text. And we're just going to give this a Boolean, and we are going to leave that as it is. And the reason for that is because the send email action uses a Boolean for updating for deciding the rich text template bodies. And I have do have to apologize. I don't think I need that, but let me just come back to that. So what we've got our plain text bodies, we've got our rich text bodies. What we need actually is to have a text variable, I believe. So text variable, and it should just be the message body. And this should be our text. Yes, that should be right. I don't think we need a text template. So we've got that. And what we need to do after we decide on a rich text, we need to set the Boolean value. So this is going to be plain text. We are going to just set plain text parameters, and we'll just set that ready for the email action. I'm going to have here, so we're going to have the var message body, and this is going to be the template plain text, and we are going to do the rich text Boolean, and we're going to have this be false. So we've got that. So that updates that tick box. We're going to add in a second assignment here, and we're going to just go set rich text parameters. and this is going to be our message body. And we are going to have this be our rich text template. And we are going to have our Boolean be marked as true. And that will then update. And you'll see why I've done this once we get into the email action, because doing it in this method will allow us to use one email action rather than doing two across the same thing. So just very briefly, I mentioned we weren't going to touch on email alerts, but I will show you this. So what you can do is here, if you have an email alert, you'll be able to search the email alerts in here, and you'll be able to attach them and send them from your flow. But I don't actually have any email templates that are available, but you would be able to search in here for your email alerts if you have any, and then it would send out based on the email alerts that you set up. But we are instead going to use an action, and we're going to use our send email action, and this is the one that we are going to use. So we're going to do email. I'm just going to call that send message. Send message there, and you can see here we've got a bunch of different fields in here. So we've got our message, our body field, which is our message body, and that will be just the message body variable that we've created. We've got the email template ID. So what you can do within that is, if you have an email template, you can tick this checkbox, and you can populate this with an ID, and it will send an email template with the merge tags as well. The thing with the merge tags is they aren't editable inside of a flow, so you can't edit your email template merge tags inside a flow. But what you can do is you can just load up an email template straight and send that out in there. But if you want to edit email templates, you won't be able to edit merge tags using this model. We've got the log email on send function as well. And what we can do, so we're going to say log email on send. For this one, we're going to say this one's going to be true, because it's a Boolean, so it's looking for true or false. And what this allows us to do is, when we send the email, it will allow us straight to send that to a contact, and you'll be able to log that against your contact in this example. There is in here as well, there's a recipient address collection and recipient address list. If you're using recipient ID and related record IDs, personally I would ignore these two. But what the recipient address collection is, it's a collection that you build up in your flow of email addresses, and that would be a text collection. And the recipient address list, that's just a comma separate list of emails. So if you want to say send it to just a single individual, I would probably end up using the recipient address list rather than the collection, if you're going with that model. You've then got recipient ID, and this is looking for generally most cases a contact. You can attach them to records such as leads. I believe you can also do it with accounts as well. But generally speaking, most of the time you'll probably be doing this with a contact. So, but we are going to add a recipient ID here. So we're going to have this. I'm going to have the record, and you'll see here we've already got a contact field on there. So I'm going to set my contact on there. Related record IDs. You can add a related record ID. I don't believe this is a collection. I think this is just a single record at the moment, but you'll be able to relate this to another record, such as a case or an opportunity or whatever other record you want to attach that to. You could relate that. But I'll have to triple check. And apologies if I didn't get to check this before, but I believe that's just a single record value. Then you can see in the last little bits that we've got rich text formatted body. And from what we're going to do here, I'm going to add in the Boolean here. And you can see that I added that in as a Boolean on there and updated that in there. So simply I could have one email action rather than doing true or false and having to create two email actions. You've got the option to have a sender email address, and that's just a standard text. I have had some challenges in the past of getting that to actually work as intended. So for this one, I'm going to leave that as blank, and we're going to leave the sender type as blank. And what happens if you don't enable them, it will send via your default email workflow user. So you'll get an email from them. The last one, and here's the subject. And the subject, fairly obvious to probably all of us who've worked with emails in the past. But for this one, we're going to do record, and we're going to do email subject, which for me, for the sake of these, is the name field on that one. So we've got this ready. And that's the email action. You can see it's quite a bit in there involved. The new things that have been added is the email template ID and the log email on send, along with the recipient and related record IDs. Those are the new things that have been added in this most recent release. But we're going to click on done for now. So we've configured that. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a quick assignment, set updated send status. And we're going to add in a final update to this so that we can then say it has been set to send. You can see there, so that's been set to send. And then the final step is to just do our update record. So update status to send. I will call it that for the sake of ease on that one. So we're just going to update this schedule record. And again, we're just going to do the same as we did before with the record collection update. And then that will be all that we will need for this flow. Before we do that, I'm just going to quickly check. I set that to pending. Yes. So then, so the thing to do now with the work with this record is to then save it, and we are going to add in a name, and then we'll test it. So we're going to do send email on schedule. I'm just going to call it send email on schedule for this one. Now there is different ways you could name your flow on there. I do like the idea of using object names in there, but for this one, we're just going to call it send email on schedule. I'm going back and forth in my head on like how we do API naming for things like the flow names. So I'm working on that currently. So, but for now, we're just going to call it send email on schedule for this demo. And you can see here, you'll get an error message if you don't have a default workflow user. That shouldn't really affect you too much. This is a new org I've just set up, so there isn't a default workflow user here, but we can easily activate that. So you can see that there the flow is activated, and we'll now be able to run a test. I'm going to copy my email template name because I want to come back to that in a little bit. But I'm going to go to schedule messages, which is my custom object here. And you'll see we should have nothing in here in recently viewed or in all, because I haven't created one yet. But what we'll do is we'll create a new record, and you'll see here we've got a message that is ready to go. So we're just going to do test email message. I'm going to create a new contact, and I'm just going to add in myself on here just so we can have a test. And I'm just going to do a test there, and I'm not going to add any other information other than the email. We're going to set the send date and time, and it's because it's currently 19:37 UK time. I'm going to set this to run at 19:30. I might change that to 19:39 depending if the minute changes. We're going to leave the send status for now, but we are going to set this up as a rich text. And you'll see here, I'm just going to put this in and do some little bit of formatting. Just, and we're going to just add a little bit of formatting just so you can see that it should send as plain text. So I'm just going to put in a bit of blue there, and that'll do. That blue did not work, so we just do that one more time. And we'll add that in. And now we can see that blue's gone in. So we're going to set this to run at 1939. And that will then schedule that to run. And what we'll be able to do is if we go back into our setup, what you can do to check that the messages have gone is you can go to time-based workflows. If you have not seen before, this is a really helpful tool that you can use to actually look at what is due to be sent via time-based or workflow automation. So record triggered flows on there and schedule actions for process and process builder. But we're going to be using this for record triggered flows. You can search by a number of different options. I often tend to go with the object name, and you can see there that the schedule has been set as scheduled to go out at 1939. So that should run any minute now. And you can see there, if we go back to the record, it has updated the send status of pending. Now, if I go back to my time-based workflow and I just search again, you'll see that's gone. And if I come into my Gmail really quickly and I'll load that, you can see here, and I'm going to just mark this as safe, you'll see here that the email has gone through. So you very quickly, you can actually create a fairly simple means of sending emails out on a schedule using that kind of methodology, creating a custom object to house the record. And you can see there the sent status has been updated as sent because the automation's worked. Now, there is ways you can enhance this. I have done a fairly bare bones version of this. But one of the things that you can do very easily with this kind of method is you can add in, like I would personally, if I was doing this just sending emails, I would add in a delete option into the record triggered flow to delete this record afterwards. Because if you send it via email, you shouldn't really need to have it as a secondary record if you've already sent it. But to show you that I sent it, just so you can see, let's come into here, and you can see if I go into my activity compose on the side, I've got my enhanced email record there, and you can see it's sent that straight through. So you can see there we've technically got two versions of this record, which is why I mentioned if you were to implement this kind of a solution for yourself in your own org, I would probably encourage you to add a delete element into that for this kind of task. Now, the next one that we had on the list, I don't know if anybody had any questions or anything based on what we've just went through. So I might just see if anybody has any questions before we move on to the working with email templates. Oh, good chat. Yeah.
I had a question. What would be another use case to create this custom object for scheduled messages? I know, yeah, I think that's my question. I was going to expand on it, but yeah, what other use case would we have for that object?
Yes, so obviously that would depend a lot on the context of that. The reason why I came up with the idea of building it was because Salesforce does not have the functionality to do this natively. So, like for example, if you're like I work at a consultancy, and sometimes I probably less you should admit, but sometimes I work after hours, and with that, you don't necessarily want to be emailing your clients out like late in the day. Like if I've been away, or if I've been working like remote work, traveling, and I'm saying still working like 10 o'clock at night because of things happening that day. Don't necessarily want to be emailing clients like 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what I can do is I could set up an email using this model and then send it out at like 9 o'clock the following day. So that means that, for example, I can set up an email and not forget about it, and then send it later. Some clients might potentially have very specific times on when you can email them. I've seen that before in some of the in some sectors I've engaged with before. I've used to work in the homelessness sector, and I do know of an organization where they would only be able to only respond to emails between the hours of 2 and 4 p.m. Or you could only email like their service users between certain hours.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I usually with flows, I struggle with variables, like creating variables and what types of variables to create. So I really like that part of your flow. I don't have any other questions, but I enjoyed watching you build that. Thank you.
Right. No worries. And I see Connie's posted a question on here about having issues with asynchronous paths triggering multiple times. Oh, I've not actually seen that before, to be honest, Connie. That's a new one on me. What I
So,
could
I thought that's why, like at the end, you put that it was send, and I thought maybe if that was an entry criteria, that's what I ended up doing. I think I had a decision element at one point,
Yeah.
but I haven't found any information on that, but I have had experiences with
Right.
it, specifically with Slack posting messages. We have, yeah, and there's no error to it, but it'll just post several times. It's like it doesn't know it happened. So I didn't know if you had any experience with that email being sent several times.
Honestly, for this, no, I haven't. I haven't seen that issue you've mentioned with Slack. I've used work with Slack before, but it doesn't sound. It sounds fairly likely that it could happen, but I've never experienced it personally. One consideration point might be whether or not the flow, how many times is in time-based workflows. That one on there. So you saw how it showed the time-based workflow section before. It is possible. Historically, it has been a case where if you have edited a record that has a scheduled path on it, and you've edited that, there has historically been times where it has basically triggered the path multiple times based on every time you've edited the record. That is meant to have been cleaned up a bit now, from my understanding, but that could be potentially a possibility if it's basically triggers the path every time you edit it and create it. But I've not seen that personally on asynchronous paths. But that
Okay.
might be an explanation. I'd have to understand a bit more what's going on there. But
Yeah, that might make sense because I know it was on update. I think my particular one of my examples was on opportunity when a stage changed. But you're right. Like it might have maybe triggered something on that same opportunity. I don't know, but then it should be an endless loop of that. But yeah, I just didn't know if there was something I was missing. I ended up putting a decision element in a Boolean field so that it wouldn't get triggered more than once. But I was hoping for some other insight if anyone had it.
yeah, so unfortunately, I don't. But oftentimes, you do find adding the decision element does actually create a good workaround for these kind of issues on there. I've done that several times over the years on stuff. Cool. Well, it's just want to check before I move on to the email template side. Is there any other questions specifically around the stuff that we've just done there on scheduled emails? Okay, no, so it looks like it's quite okay. So we're going to move on now to our scheduled emails on there. So I want to go back to get my customizable email template name, just because I don't think I've copy and pasted that, or might have done a copy and paste since. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a screen flow for this one, and we're going to basically show you how you can view and update potentially a email template before you send it out. So we're going to create a screen flow. And for this one, what we are going to do is we are going to create a new choice on here. And we're going to create this. Actually, I've told you the wrong one. It's not going to be a choice, it's going to be a record choice set. I am confusing myself on this one. So we're going to just give this a record choice set. I'm just going to call this email template. So we're going to call this email template. And we're going to put this in because what happens in Salesforce, one of the things you might not actually know is that just about everything in Salesforce, from a technical perspective, is essentially a record underneath the hood. So your record types are records underneath the hood. Your field definitions are records underneath the hood. And there's quite a few more different objects within that kind of set framework. One of them is email template. So what we're going to be looking for is an email template, and we're going to be looking for the name of that. So we're going to use the email template name, and we are going to add in actually, I'm going to come back to that because I do want to do something different for that. So we're going to leave that for now. I'll come back and I'll show you what we're going to do in a second on that one. We're going to leave that actually unfiltered. That's fine. That's fine. I'm talking about something different. So we're going to have the name here. I'll have this be text. I'm going to have that be name. And what we're going to be able to do there is we're going to actually add that in as a choice lookup into here as well. So we're going to click on done. And that's all. That's what we need to do for this first step. That first step is create a record choice set for that. We're then going to add in the screen. We're going to use our fancy choice lookup component. We're going to make this required, and we're going to look for the email template name here. I can spell template. And what this allows us to do is this will allow us to search for the email template one, because we just assigned the choice there as the email template. From there, we'll be able to search the email template, and then we'll be able to bring that up into the flow. So we're going to do the component visibility. That's fine. For the screen, we're just going to do search email templates. We're just going to get that screen here. So search email templates. And we're going to configure the header. Just going to take that header out. I'm not going to touch the footer on this one, but you could easily customize the footer by clicking on your configure footer and making some changes to the labels. For example, you could turn off the pause on there. So I'm going to, and I often do that with simple screen flows like this, often hide the pause so that we don't, because often the time you don't want necessarily have these pause so that they don't stay dormant for a while on that front. I don't do that for every flow, but for some flows, quite often I do just turn off the pause to prevent users from potentially clicking pause and it being stuck on pause for a long time. That's the first screen. So we've just got the search configurator here. We're then going to have our get records here, and we're going to get our email template. We're going to do a get email template here, and what we're going to do is we're going to again have this be email template, and this is where we're going to use the filter, and this is going to be where the name equals the value from the choice lookup. So we're going to have that be that, and we're only going to do the first record for this one. So as I say, my general advice is going to be, if you're going to use this kind of a model at all, going to be to ensure that you only have one email template of the same name, just to avoid any issues with just retrieving a template that doesn't match. You could, if you wanted to enhance that, you could potentially have it be a collection, and to offer you basically the choice of which template you want to use if you find multiple. But in this case, we're just going to use the get email template. Actually, I am going to configure this slightly. We're just going to change that to the ID. The ID is going to be better here, so we're going to use the ID for that. So let's just update this, and we'll have this be the ID. Equals the choice. So we'll change that to be the ID. So that'll work a bit better. What we're going to do at this stage is we're going to actually display the email template here. So we're going to have the input. So we're going to have the screen here, and we're going to have this to be our configure email template. Going to have the header, and in here we're going to have our use a long text area field for this one. Going to require this, and we're going to put this be email body over here. Now, one thing I will say on this one is just to give you a bit of a heads up. If you are using a rich text email template, you will have HTML in here. So there is potentially ways to work around that, but you will. But because you don't necessarily have a rich text editor in Flow natively, and the default method would be to use an email. We use the message body. Well, for that, we're going to have the HTML value here, because that is what Lightning templates use by default. Use HTML, so we're going to have the HTML value here. And then what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to configure that, and then you're going to be able to send that once that's configured. Once we've configured that, we'll be able to just simply do a send email action. You could also add in additional steps just to confirm that things have gone in there as well. Actually, I've got a little bit ahead, because what we haven't done here is we haven't decided who we're going to send this to. So we're going to add in here another choice lookup. So we're going to add in a record choice set again here, and we're going to have this to be rec choice, and this is going to be our contact. I'm going to have this to be contact. And for the sake of ease, what we're going to do, just because this is a dev org, we're going to have a ton of contacts, I am going to filter it down so that you can only find my contacts there. There is, you obviously normally we wouldn't necessarily do this, but you would be able to add another filters if you need to. But for the sake of making this search easier, we're going to use a filter there, so it's for myself. And then we're going to assign this to be the contact ID. So we've got that now, and I'm going to add in another choice lookup here. And we are going to have this be reader select the email recipient. And this is going to be our choice lookup. That's going to be the contact. And you'll see there we've got that configured over here. And now we will now be able to sort out the send email template, send email action. So we're going to do another send email action here. And we're going to do email, send message, send message here. For this one, we're going to use the input version. And we are going to use the logon send again. We are going to then send the recipient ID to be the input, and we're going to have this to be the email recipient, and then the values. We're going to set this to be rich text as well. and that, and then the subject. Well, let's fill in the subject for now as test, and then we'll add in a quick little bit on here because I did not do a subject. So let's add in a text field here underneath. So let's just add that there. And we're going to just add in an email subject here. Email subject. And then we'll use that in our send action instead. So just change that to be input and email subject. And yeah, and just for the record as well, you might have spotted there, most of the, whenever I do work with screen flows and I'm working with input components, I always put the initial part of the API name. I also always say that's input. So that means if I was to say download all of the API names of my components for some reason, I can straight away tell which ones are meant to be for inputs, because you see here they list them all in screen components here. So you can see there straight away they all register as input components. So we're going to do save this as a screen flow, and we're going to then run a test on that so you can see how this works in practice. So we're going to configure email template. And there's things you could do in here as well, for example, that you would be able to use in there. Now we'll talk about that in just a moment. So we've saved that and we'll debug that. So you can see how it works in debug. So you can see here we've got our run input, and in there you can see our other email templates. If I paste that, you'll see I've got my list there, customize our email template. If I click on next, you'll see we've got that, and I'm going to extend that a little bit. So you can see here, this is set up an email subject. So this is an awesome test email message. Change that to format a little bit. Recipients, I've got there because I've filtered down to just myself. I can add that in there, but I would be able to search anybody. And you can see here, you've got the HTML here for this. And you can see that will be able to do this. So if I'm going to, so you can see here, I've got a basic template that I'll be able to do. I'm just going to add in and just go hi Mark. And I'm going to just change these over here as well. So you can see I'm just updating this template before it goes out. And I'm also going to add in make this bold in there. Now, as I say, if you want to customize with HTML, you would have to know a little bit about HTML as well. These two tags I'm adding in here are just simply bold and italic tags on there. And you could add other things, styling tags as well in terms of that. I will be probably looking to do some more content in the future. One of the things I do want to try and get ironed out is how you could maybe have this, just have a rich text editor here and for that to work. So that you don't have to code the emails, use the HTML coding. But in terms of that, you've got the HTML there, you can see there. So if you know a little bit of HTML, you can easily work with this and add in some information there. You'll then be able to click on next and descend, and you'll see that the email has registered as gone. And let's just go back to our inbox, and you'll see here we've got our email has come through. A little bit nicer formatting as well, because it's stuck with the HTML as it was. It hasn't added additional lines, like Flow Builder adds in additional lines and text templates for some bizarre reason. So this actually come through a little bit cleaner, and you can see there I've got the bold text there straight away with that. And Connie's asked, is there a preview that could be shown to do that? Yes, absolutely. So if I was to go, I can show you how you could do that as well. So if you want to just do add in another screen here and just do preview. So it's going to be email preview. what I would do here personally is for this one is I would just take off. I'm just going to take off the header again because I really don't like the headers on there. And if I scroll down, you'll see here we've got a section there called display text. If I add in my display text and I add in a display, so I'm just going to do email preview. What you can do here is you can add in your input, email text long area body, and this will display in HTML. You'd also be able to add an extra bits around that as well if you want to add in some text guidance. Just say, for example, if I put in a couple of line breaks and go hi, and then just go close the email you were about to send.
Would that also show the like any merge fields as they would appear if you had those?
So if you were displaying the merge fields, it should do, yes. But the thing would be, if you were to send, the merge fields don't transfer from flow components into the send email action. So if you were using email templates and you were using merge tags, you wouldn't be able to. You would have to basically add in custom merge tags essentially inside of flow.
So inside your
Yeah, it's one of those weird things that,
and
it doesn't work with email tags.
Yeah, and you had said, like, for whatever weird reason, it gives you that extra return. That's what I'm struggling with, is the fact that there's a use case that I have that you would, we need to send it out through a flow as opposed to just the regular email template ability, but then you're sending stuff out without knowing what the client's getting. And sometimes it just has weird formatting. Or no, that's not what I meant to send, or there's this weird space. And, certainly client wants to see what's being sent before he presses send. And there's just, other than a Visualforce page, I guess, but even that doesn't display correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is, so that's a bit hard, of a challenge. Like the line return is a ridiculous one. We've complained about that for years. So why is that a double return? Mark did ask a question which might be relevant to this one, which is there a way I could let the user edit the email from the flow screen at this stage? The short answer to that is yes. The way to do that would be if the context is that you use the flow first to set up the email template, and then you pass it on to another user to go, this is what's about to be sent, can you confirm? That would be best done with an orchestration, using Flow Orchestrator, because then you could send them essentially a second screen flow where it passes the details into it from the first screen flow into another. So yes, but that isn't entirely possible. Just going back into the preview here, so let's just add in another preview. I'm just going to do Mark there, and I'm going to add in a bold tag there, just so you can see, make it a bit easier, and so we can actually show you that on the preview. So as long as I haven't done a rookie mistake. And I'm going to remove that there and put that there. So let's go to next and preview. So you can see there, and this one's added the additional lines, but this is Flow doing that. So you can always go back and you always edit, and you can see if there's anything that's coming up there. So for example, we could take off the additional BR, and if you click on next, you should see there we've got a bit less of a gap there coming through. And if you want to even do the last little one, actually no, we can't, because that if I take out that line breaker one preview, so you've got that preview there, and you can see there that I've added in bold, If I click on send, click on next and go back to my email, it'll come through and it's come through formatted. And again, you see there, removing those line breaks has actually put them on lines one next to each other. So the flow renderer is not as necessarily as intuitive as one would like, where it adds an additional line breaks into the preview. But from what you can see there, you saw I was able to bring in an email template. I was able to make some tweaks to it. I was able to send it on with the HTML formatting as well. Because one thing you've noticed on there was when I had this as a text, as an input text field for long text respects HTML. So you can, if you know HTML, you can add the HTML formatting around your text in there, and you can send it. If you do that just as a plain text body, you could just type it in straight as plain text and then send it out from that as well. So if I was to show you one final example of doing this, and if I took out all the HTML formatting, you'll be able to see how this would work. So if I was to take out all of the HTML formatting, what you'll see there is you'll end up seeing that I have some minimal information here. If I now just pop that in there, and I just took out all of that and I leave it as HTML formatting, what you'll see is end up seeing a bunch of clean text. So let's just do on there, and this will send that through, and you'll see if we go into the preview that'll render it out more or less as plain text. You can see from that. And if I then click on next to send the email, come back to that, you'll see here it's basically just put it all in one line for that. So you can actually strip out HTML within that as well, but you would get the emails all in one line. In terms of little tricks you can do to maybe to enhance it potentially, is you could easily set up an email template, a text template where you have your body. So what you could have potentially is, if I was to go back to my email template, you could actually have it so that you just have a body in there. So you just take out all of the information here, and you just have that like that. So you just have a simple strip line body with no merge tags or customization or anything like that. Just literally your base email body that you're going to be sending out. You could actually very easily go back into a flow like this and add in some additional stuff. So you could add in, say, for example, a text field here, and this could be the recipient first name. And you could add that in there, for example, and then you could add in a couple of extra fields on here. And what you can do there is you could have this here. So this could be sender organization as an example here. So sender organization. And this can be sender full name. And what you'll be able to see here is if I just add these in, I could then take the text template, create a text template here, have this be rich text, and have this be email body. And what you could do here is you could then very easily have a bit here. So you have this be, so this could be the recipient name. I don't know, line break there. This can be the input And this can be the input email body. And then have underneath here, send a full name and sender organization. And what you'll see there is I've just by doing a little bit of jiggling around with this, I've been able just to have the email body here and then my recipient first name there. So what you'll see here is if I click on done and then update my email action to be the template. And this is going to be template email body. And we'll update the preview at the end to be the template as well. So you'll be able to see. I'll scroll down, template email body. You'll be able to see if we do one last little demo of this, how we can actually enhance this a little bit. And this would probably actually be more my preferred method. So we're going to use customize the email template. And you can see there, if you scroll down, we've got the email there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just take out the head, and I'll leave the body style in there. And I'll take out the HTML at the end. And I'm going to just add in a bold here. And also an italic, which is the EM tag. Just have this there. So I'm going to do test email 4. And we're going to have this to be email recipient, send the full name. And then we're going to have this be Mark. And if we click on next, what you should see there is you see the preview there because it's updated the text template. So it recognizes the HTML in there already. And we'll be able to then send that as a test. You'll see there it's come up without any line breaks. So what we can easily do here if we wanted to, so we could add in a line break at the beginning. And we can do next. So you can see there we've got our line break there. Just going to add in there. Tweak that. So we've got the line break there. And we'll be able to work through that as well. So you could do some tweaking in there, some basic HTML tweaking in there. But we're not going to do that because the BR at the end is not working for this specific example. We'll click on next and we'll have a look at the send email that's come through. And you'll see there, it's added in our line breaks anyway, and we've customized that. And we've got an additional line breaks against the weird flow formatting for that on that. But you can see there we're able to basically pull in an email and we were able to configure the merge tags essentially by adding input fields into there for the merge tags that we would want to use. So that's a way to you can use this to kind of customize that. And if you wanted to get really, really creative with it, you could potentially even set up who is going to send the contact wise first. So you could have the contact, on there, you'd have the email recipient be earlier in the flow, and then have the recipient first name auto-populate. And you could do the similar things with the flow. You could have the full name and the organization name, for example, be auto-populated. By say, for example, if I was going to do that, I could easily do. So if I want to do the default value, I could do user and then just do full first name. And because we can't do full name, that would have to be a formula. We would then see the name appear there. If we were to do user, we should be able to do company name, and you'll be able to fill that in. And then the recipient first name, you'd also be able to populate. So if I was to save that and debug that, you will be able to see. Just go into my customized email template. You'll be able to see that I've got my name there, and the company name there. And you could see if you were to have the email recipient be earlier in the flow, you could populate that quite easily on there as well. So that's a quick an example of how you can work with email templates inside a flow to actually be able to configure them and to be able to send them out. There might, based on Mark's question, I might be able to look at doing one on, say, like combine it with Orchestrator at some point further down the line. So that could be an interesting potential thing to do, or that could just be a video in the future potentially. But with that, I wanted to kind of see if there was any questions in the room before we wrap up, and just to see if anybody had any questions before I move on to our last couple of bits and pieces.
No, but I was just going to say, a future thing on Orchestrator would be awesome. I'd love to learn more about that.
Cool. Yeah. So I mean, on that front, I am going to be announcing fairly soon. I'm just working on my final some bits and pieces around it, but I'm going to be doing probably a multi-month kind of series on Flow, where Orchestrator is going to be included within that, as is Slack as well, Slack and Flow, and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm going to be trying to do that. It's a bit of a big endeavor, and I'm looking at, and the reason why I haven't announced it just yet is I'm looking at options for people to maybe do like a quiz at the end of it and get a certificate at the end from it as well, so they can say they've spent that time doing that. So those are things I'm looking into. But yeah, Orchestrator is going to be part of that series. And just to see, is there any questions? Any other questions coming up? Cool. It doesn't look like there's that many questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen for 1 minute. I'm just going to get the link for my next event, because I want to just share that before we wrap up. So forgive me as I'm slightly underprepared for this one. Just going to check that URL will work. There we go. Yes. So let's go back into. So I'm going to just share this into the chat. I do have a session that is coming up, which I've just shared the link into the chat for that. But I'm going to just briefly share my screen one more time, and then I will briefly mention that event. So the next event that I've got coming up in these little one-off sessions is on the on reactive screen flows. And this session is going to be kind of an introductory session on reactive screen flows. It is something that's fairly new from Salesforce. It's only just come out this year. It was first announced properly at Trailblazer DX over in San Francisco, and it is quite a good little tool to be using. I'm actually using it currently in a dev org for myself that I'm using to track things for my job, like goals and times on that. So the session is going to be basically an introduction to reactive screen flows, where I'll show you kind of how to put one together, how you build them up, and with that, and I will hopefully as well, I'm doing some work on basically what fields you can and can't use currently with reactive screen flows, because there is some limitations to it, but those limitations are due to be changing in the next number of releases in there as well. So for example, currently at the time of writing, choices aren't reactive. However, in the winter release, choices are going to be reactive. So that's one of those little things that I'll cover in that session. So that if anybody is interested in coming to that, it'll be absolutely fantastic to see you. We do have many spaces, quite a number of spaces left for that session. We have at the moment, in terms of the tickets have gone, we've only given out 5 tickets, so only 5 tickets have gone so far, but there is more space for people to come and join. So, and that is happening on the 23rd of August. So it's the week. So it is during the summer holidays for those of us who are here in the UK. But it is happening the week kind of before the bank holiday stuff happens the following Monday. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to see you there. And if not, that is absolutely fine as well. But I'd be more than happy to see people there. With that in mind, I do want to just say a big thank you for coming. I am happy to stay on for a little bit if there's any additional questions that people haven't asked or wanted to ask before the session wraps up. But at this stage, I'm going to stop the recording, and I'm going to just say thank you for coming, and I'll hang around for a little bit longer if anybody has anything that they wanted to ask before we finish off for the night. So thank you.